Hey friends, so we gotta have a talk about the POI top 10 list, because it's not happening this year. At least, not the way it has in the past. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. Come walk with me here. So I am on my way to go shoot some videos of POI dance tutorials for the next few weeks. It is 70 degrees out today. It hasn't been that warm in a couple weeks here in DC, so I'm using the good weather while I can. Well, it is quite pleasant out. I must say I'm a fan. Drex here from DrexFactor POI, helping you discover the love of POI spinning and flow arts to benefit your body and brain. And today, I am preemptively having what is usually my yearly roundup of the top 10 list, because I think that it is time for a change in how it's done. Before we dive in, of course, I just want to give a quick shout out to the friends of the channel. Big thank you to Dark Monk, Flow Fests, Flow Toys, Pyroterra Light Toys, LMF Props, Spin Balls, and Ultra POI for helping to make the videos on this channel possible. You can check out all of these amazing companies and find out what they're doing to support flow artists like yourself by checking out the links that I've got down in the description of this here video. So I'm going to give you all a little bit of historical context here. Way back in 2012, I posted my first voting video for the POI top 10 list. It was something that was kind of inspired by the juggling top 40 list that is done every year by Luke Burge and everything. And in looking at that, I knew that there were a lot of POI spinners that wanted to get on that list. And, you know, I thought it was a cool project, but at the same time, I kind of felt like we were begging for a ticket to somebody else's party. And I really wanted us to have our own party. So I had people leave their votes in the form of comments on that video, and I wrote myself a lovely little script to go scrape through the YouTube comments, grab all the names that people left, and have a good way of tallying them up. I put together a compilation video, which I was very proud of at the time, and released it, and I got raked over the coals for it. I think that the top 10 list has become such an institution at this point that it's kind of easy to forget that when it first launched, there were a lot of people that were not happy about it. Almost universally, the criticisms of it basically boiled down to people saying that I was exacerbating a form of elitism or kind of competition in the flow arts world, and more specifically the POI world. I definitely pushed back on those criticisms at the time. Like, in the course of putting together that list, discovered a lot of artists that I'd never heard of before and got exposed to their work and everything. And, you know, I will say too, there's a certain element of stubbornness to it, as well as, you know, being proud of a project that turned out better than I was expecting. So some of those criticisms I don't think were valid for the time, and some of them, in retrospect, I kind of do. The first hint that I got that things might not be as rosy as I had hoped for was when somebody told me that, I think it was at a flow festival, somebody had approached John Alvarez and basically started bullying him over it. You know, making him out to be like, oh, you must think you're such a hotshot now that you made the top 10 list and everything. And I felt awful that, number one, that it happened to John, and number two, you know, I kind of realized at that point too, you know, he didn't ask to get put on that list, and yet he was catching hell for it, and that was kind of not right. There was another similar situation that popped up a couple years later when Jeremiah Johnson wound up on the list. He had very, very mixed feelings about being featured on it and everything, and for the first time, it opened up this question of consent with the list. And, you know, it was absolutely something that I hadn't thought of and should have, but that, you know, clearing it with people to appear on the list should be a step in that process, and it has been ever since. But once again, it was one of those moments where, you know, despite the best of my intentions, there was something here that was a little off. And, you know, it should be said, I also heard of cases where people who had made the top 10 list then used it as an excuse to indulge in some not so great behavior out at flow festivals and the like. And that was another thing that just made me kind of feel like, there might be something going wrong here. When I started it up, I didn't entirely know what it was for. You know, it was kind of something that I started on a lark that felt like a fun project. And then as it went on in years and everything, I kind of thought of it from the lens of a historian, where like every year I got to discover who were the people that the poi community felt like had made really important contributions. You know, in a lot of respects, not only was it a great way for me to discover new artists, but it was also kind of like a way for me to reverse engineer what other people in the poi world thought were the most important things going on at any given time. And therein lies one of the biggest things that I've since realized is a major flaw, both in the list and how I have approached it. Namely, that there's a large extrapolation of importance from what's really a very small amount of data. And you know, granted, this is a problem when you put together any top 10 list. This is a problem with the Oscars. This is a problem with just about any year-end list that you can come up with and everything. But in this particular case, it was damaging in ways that I didn't really understand for quite some time. You know, a couple things that I did realize right from the start were that the list overwhelmingly favored Americans as well as male spinners, and it should be said, white spinners. You know, over the course of the years and everything, there has definitely been a, shall we say, a weight or a preference given to people that match some or all of those characteristics. And it's something that, you know, especially people from outside the United States viewing my channel have called out on multiple occasions, and with good reason. And this all came to a head last year when there was somebody who made the top 10 list who has very loudly, aggressively, and publicly espoused views that I find really detestable. And one of the problems with that is that the top 10 list then not only became a mechanism by which this person gained a bigger platform, but also there was kind of this implication that there was an endorsement either on my part or the part of the community in this person's views. And I know a lot of people out there are going to be saying, you know, hey, politics and poi should live in separate places and everything. But let's be real here. Like, when somebody is seen as well respected despite having political views that are, like I said, detestable, then it does say something about where we set our priorities there. And it should also say something that I don't know that we've ever had more than 3 people on the list that were from outside the United States. We've never had more than a couple women on the list in a given year. Like, in terms of a project to kind of showcase the best that our world has to offer and everything, I think we've kind of been falling short in this regard. To say nothing of the fact that in the past few years, the list has become, shall we say, rather homogenous in terms of style. You know, there are always a few outliers on the list that have a very unique and specific style, but by and large, at least half of the spots on the list tend to go to people that have a very, very similar focus or a very similar approach to poi. So it's not really that diverse in any sense of the word. So where I'm at with this is that I don't think that in good conscience I can do the top 10 list in exactly the same way again this year. Mainly because I know that the way it landed last year hurt some people that I really, really care about in the flow world. And I don't want my work to be a vehicle for that to happen. So it's time for a change. So what exactly does that change look like? Well, that's an open question, and that's part of the reason why I'm making this video. I think that, unfortunately, one of those things that's come about as a result of just an open public vote and everything is that overwhelmingly we wind up with a list that seems to showcase people who are exactly like the people that are voting and everything. And, you know, in some circumstances, it's not always a bad thing. You know, it's good for people to be able to see themselves represented. But I would like to be able to see more people in the flow arts feel that they're represented in that list, and they're just not being represented right now. And yet, at the same time, I feel like some form of a year-end summary is a good idea. I feel like it's one of those ways that we can kind of check in and see how our community is growing and evolving every year. And more than anything else, like, achieve that original goal that I kind of had as I discovered this project of, like, having a historical document, having something that we can look back on and say, here's how our community has changed over the years, and here were these, like, milestones that we had there and everything. Question is how best to do it. So this is part of the reason why I'm making this video. I'm open to suggestions here. I've had a couple thoughts. Among them, would be the possibility of reaching out to some people that I really respect in the flow world and asking them to weigh in with the one person that they really feel contributed to the flow arts in a meaningful way in this particular year. I kind of like this idea for no other reason than it gives me the chance to, reach out to some people who might give me ideas that I would not have had on my own, nor would people have necessarily done it by raw vote. And, more of a chance that people get to see the faces that reflect their own world in that list. One of those things that might come about as a result of that is that you get people on the list that are contributing to their communities in ways that are different than just being awesome at poi, which is something that I always wanted to happen on the list and somehow just never did. Another option is that I could quite frankly just curate the list to start with and put in a who's who of the people whose work I really appreciated in the past year. I don't know necessarily that that's going to be terribly widely encompassing, but I can definitely think off the top of my hand people that have contributed in a lot of ways that don't normally get a lot of exposure on the list. So yeah, at this point, I'm opening it up to you all for discussion. How do we open this up in such a way that we can document our history while at the same time making sure that we are creating space to represent the wide diversity of voices in our community? I would love to hear your suggestions. And for those of you out there who have that vested interest in what the top 10 list has been, don't worry, I'm fairly certain that it will indeed live on in one form or another. Chris Kelly has been after me now for a couple years to try and take it over to his channel and everything, so maybe he'll do that this year. I don't know, I haven't checked in with him. But yeah, if you're looking for the traditional top 10 list, I find it impossible to believe that that will not survive in some shape or form. And in the meantime, I have arrived at my destination and it's time to start recording some poi dance tutorials. Yay. I love how beautiful it is out. I definitely picked a good afternoon to do this. Yeah, I can't wait to hear what those suggestions are. Definitely let me know. Please make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and of course to share. Really, really important to get that last one this time around because I really want to hear from a lot of different people about how they think that the top 10 list can be changed in order to better service our community. And of course, a huge thank you because this video would not be possible without the kind contributions of these amazing folks right here. These are my wonderful Flow patrons over on Patreon, and they make this video and all the videos on this channel possible. If you would like to sign up to support this work that I am trying to do to bring the love of flow arts to the wider world, you can do so by heading over to patreon.com/DrexFactorPoi and signing up. You can get early access to all of my content as well as a say in what topics I tackle in the future. Plus some great behind the scenes and extra content as well. So go and check that out, please and thank you. Awesome, I'm gonna start filming. Thank you all for listening to me rant about all of this. I had some more aggressive thoughts to share about this sort of thing, but I think it's better to kind of leave things open and not put anybody on the spot and everything. So yeah, thanks so much, and let's see how we all grow as a community this year, yeah? Peace.